Harrison. He chose the question, in light of the Haitian cholera outbreak, how can the UN best ensure that peacekeeping efforts protect the day-to-day lives of civilians? So please congratulate Chase Harrison.
Woo!
U2 frontman Bono, ever the activist, in a concert in Dublin, began to clap, stating that every time he clapped, a child in the underdeveloped world passed away. To which a drunk Dubliner screamed, "Then stop clapping, you twat." It seems that although celebrities like Bono think they're helping the underdeveloped world, they're not doing much. And it's not clapping that's killing the citizens there, it's deadly diseases. According to the New York Times, on November 10th of 2010, this was best evidence when, in Haiti, there was a large cholera outbreak. And although the disease is easy to treat, mismanagement by the UN resulted in nearly 500,000 people in the country getting the disease. Because restraining outbreaks of diseases in these countries is not only so important for the welfare of the citizens, but also the development of these countries towards more stable democracies, it's important that the UN examines its procedures and asks itself today's question. In light of the Haitian cholera outbreak, how can the UN best ensure that its peacekeeping efforts help the day-to-day lives of its civilians? And the answer is by reforming some of its policies. First, by increasing its sanitation efforts. Second, by working on its first response mechanisms. And third, by better managing its peacekeeping forces. But when the cholera outbreak broke out, it was unfortunate that 3 months earlier, Hurricane Tomas spread through the region. And because cholera is spread by water, it created such great environments for the cholera to get through. So recognizing this, first, the United Nations needs to work on its sanitation efforts. According to another article from the New York Times, on November 27th of 2010, when we look at the cause of the cholera outbreak in Haiti, it can mainly be attributed to poor sanitation habits within the country. According to the article, there is no public sanitation department or septic procedure, and so water is largely left untreated. But furthermore, when we look at regulations of how employers can make their employees work in this water, there is little. And so when these people go to work, they are constantly being affected by it. On a day-to-day basis, these people were living in this infected water, creating an environment that made this cholera outbreak be so deadly. However, according to the Voice of America, on January 10th of 2012, there are key steps the UN can take in order to help sanitations in developing countries. According to an article, there is a small straw that the UN often gives out that instantly sanitizes water when drunk through it. And furthermore, the UN does have programs in sanitation throughout the developing world. However, the progression of these programs has not reached levels that's really improving the outlook of these citizens. And so when it comes to diseases spreading, but also in the day-to-day life, the poor quality of this water is constantly affecting them, making them sick and producing these outbreaks. So the United Nations, identifying what happened in Haiti, must look at sanitation as a #1 thing to do in order to stop the cholera outbreak, because cleaner water simply means better conditions. However, the United Nations is known as one of the most inefficient organizations in the world. And with nearly every country in the world yelling at the same time, it's easy to see why they rarely get stuff done. This also translates to peacekeeping, because second, the United Nations needs to work on first response basis and more permanent infrastructure. The Washington Post reported on December 15th of 2010, during the cholera outbreak, that although it only started in one town, it quickly spread all through the nation, and there simply were not enough hospitals to treat the people. So although this disease was largely treatable, some people had to walk nearly 4 hours by car in order to get some sort of treatment. But furthermore, an international pharmaceutical company offered the United Nations the vaccine for cholera for only $900,000, to which the UN turned it down, saying they didn't think the cost weighed the amount of citizens who were going to die, because they under-anticipated how bad this crisis was going to be. According to another article from the New York Times, on January 10th of 2011, when we look at first response basis in the UN, it's been pitiful, and although the cholera outbreak could have been contained, they were too slow with their peacekeeping missions. And furthermore, the lack of permanent hospital infrastructure means that at a day-to-day basis, sick patients aren't getting care in the underdeveloped world. And so the UN should build this infrastructure and have more first response in order to improve the life of its civilians. However, the movie Hotel Rwanda tells the story largely of the peacekeepers in the UN who feel disillusioned that they wanted to bring peace, but just find that they're managing things. So looking at these peacekeepers, third, the United Nations must work in order to improve the jobs that the peacekeepers are doing. In a shocking report, the Los Angeles Times reported on January 20th of 2011 that cholera outbreak was caused when Nepali UN peacekeepers came and brought the disease to Haiti, causing an international outcry, to which the UN Center for Disease Control just said that this was not pertinent to the current situation and no one should really care, which shows their negligence of this issue. Furthermore, another article from The Voice of America on November 21st of 2011 says that the UN is having problems keeping their peacekeepers ruly, and when we look at countries like Haiti, they were actually showing to rape and to not be helping the citizens. Many beatings were taking place. And so when we look at the combination of the peacekeepers causing the crisis and then mishandling the situation when they're in the country, we can see that the United Nations needs to work to ensure that its peacekeeping troops are being more ruly and are actually keeping peace and doing their jobs. Because if they don't, we're going to see, when it comes to outbreaks and the day-to-day life, citizens are actually going to see detriments from the UN peacekeeping troops. And so, because the United Nations peacekeeping troops are so important in crises, and when we saw in Haiti they were inefficient, the UN should ask itself today's question. In light of the cholera outbreak in Haiti, how can the United Nations peacekeeping effort best protect the day-to-day lives of civilians? And the answer is key reformations on its policy. First, by working on sanitation. Second, by working on permanent infrastructure and first response. And third, by better managing its peacekeeping troops. So, although Bono might think he's some global health crusader, if the UN plays its cards right, it can be the true rock star.